Hey everybody, it's a double header today, another rulebook review. Today we'll be taking a look at the latest Death Battletome, which is Nighthaunts. This is the first time they've had their own book, and this couples really well with the Soul Wars box set, of course, taking that army and expanding with a whole bunch of new units. It is not as, I'd say it's a bit more self-contained than the Legion of Nagash. It's not as, I would say, not as versatile. There's not different legions. You just get Nighthaunts as just ghosts, and the few people they'll ally with, which is Death Lords and Soul Blights, so vampires and the big magey character beasties from the Legions of Nagash. But they do get some cool tricks and neat stuff. Of course, you can see them in action in the battle report today when I play Owen from Game with the Cooler with my new Nighthaunt army and his captaining of my Stormcast Eternals from the new Stormcast Battletome. And of course, the review of that is linked below, as well as that game. So we'll do our usual thing here. We're gonna go through the top things. We're not gonna go through everything, because if you've seen all the spoilers for Soul Wars, all the units that are in the Soul Wars box set, I'm not gonna bother overviewing. I'm just going to talk about the stuff that's new, and then we're going to talk about the, of course, the cool new stuff like the allegiance traits, the artifacts, spells, stuff they have access to, and then any War Scroll battalions they can have as well. And then, of course, some point values for all the new stuff. I'm not going to bother with the stuff that's in. Actually, I don't even know if I should bother with the point values, because the General's Handbook said today, and all those point values are in there. There are some endless spells, though, that are new, too, along with the other new units. So first of all, let's get started with allegiance abilities. So, Aura of Dread. Subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of enemy units that are within 6 inches of any friendly Nighthaunts. Yeah, you're just scary because you're ghosts. Deathless Spirits. Roll a dice every time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly Nighthaunt model. It's wholly within 12 inches of your general or a friendly Nighthaunt hero. And a 6+, it is negated. So you get a 6+ shrug, wholly within 12 of a hero, or or if you're the hero yourself, you just get it all the time, basically. From the underworlds they come. This is super cool. This is basically the same ability that the Stormcast have. So like the Stormcast can ride the lightning down, you can come up out of the ground because you're a ghost. When you are setting up units, every unit you set up on the battlefield, you can set up 1 unit in reserve. They can arrive at any time after basically the game has begun at the end of your movement phase. They can be anywhere on the table, not within 9 of enemy models. And it counts as their move. And of course, that's set up before the 4th battle round, they are slain. They feed on terror. Each time an enemy unit fails a battle shock test, pick a Nighthaunt hero within 6 inches and they heal 1 wound. Wave of Terror. This is my favorite one. If you make an unmodified charge roll of 10+ for a friendly Nighthaunt's unit, it can immediately fight after they complete the charge move. This does not stop them from being picked to fight in the combat phase. They can fight twice per turn, and they do it immediately. Now, they don't pile in and fight. They just fight. So after you make your charge move, they don't get to move again. They all just swing. Yeah. It's so good. It's so good. And it's unmodified charge rolls of 10+. So the first thing I thought was chronomatic cogs, make them all faster. Doesn't work, has to be unmodified. But of course you can reroll charge rolls to try and get it. If you're super close and you know you're gonna make it anyway, why not spend a CP to reroll it and see if you can get that 10+ for a free round of fights. And then finally, Spectral Summons. You can use command ability at the start of your movement phase. If you do so, pick a friendly Nighthaunt units on the battlefield, anywhere, remove them, and set them up wholly within 12 of the general and more than 9 from enemy models. This counts as their move in that movement phase. That is a super cool ability. You could basically translocate units around the table to make them be where you want them to be. Late game, that can be huge. And it's just a command ability that all of you have. Returning slain models is a special thing here. They can only be set up within 3 inches of an enemy unit if 1 or more models from the unit that are returning are already within 3 inches of an enemy unit. So if you're already in combat, you can set them up close by. You can't set them up close by if the unit's not already in combat. And that's it for the allegiance abilities. That's a really cool list of traits. Now, I know you're thinking, no grave markers, no bringing units back. That is the price you pay. There's a lot of healing built into the faction, but there is no recycling units like the Legions of Nagash have. That is purely a Legions of Nagash obnoxious ability to bring units back for CPs, to trade CPs for units. It's not available to Nighthaunts. There's a lot of summoning. There's an artifact that can kind of do some similar stuff, but for the most part, we're just talking healing, and if you're wiped out, you're wiped out. Command traits. Hatred of the Living is my favorite one. If you have that command trait, you can reroll failed hit rolls for attacks made by them, unless the target has the death keyword. He just hates everything that's alive. So everything from his own Grand Alliance he doesn't hate, everything else he hates. I love that one. Super, super good. Terrifying Entity. At the start of each of the enemy movement phases, roll a die for each unit within 3 inches of this model. If it rolls equal or greater than their bravery characteristic, and remember you're -1, then they just retreat. They have to retreat, so he'll just scare people away at the start of every hero phase. Start of every enemy movement phase. Lingering Spirit, add one of their wounds. Spiteful Spirit, roll a die each time you allocate a wound to this general that was inflicted by a melee weapon. On a 5+, the attacking unit takes a mortal wound. Cloaked in Shadows, -1 to hit for attacks made by missile weapons that target the general. Ruler of the Spirit House, at the start of your hero phase, you can pick a friendly summonable Nighthaunt unit within 9 inches and return D3 slain models. They have to be set up within 9 of the general. So he can kind of, it's not as good as Deathly Invocation. There's still a reason to ally in Soulblight Vampires basically in every army you make, because the Soulblight Vampires are the best. But you can take a trade to kind of get a baby version of that. It's only 1 unit and it's only within 9 inches. Then there are your Spell Lores, and these are available to all wizards in the Nighthaunt army, but of course it's only Nighthaunt wizards. So Soul Cage has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of the caster that's visible to them. Until the start of the next hero phase, they cannot retreat. In addition, at the start of your next hero phase, the unit cannot fight in the combat phase unless all other enemy units have already done so. So they get slowed down to striking last. Spirit Drain, 4+ to cast. If successfully cast, pick an enemy model within 18 inches of the caster that's visible. Roll a dice equal to the model's wound characteristic, and for each 6+, they take a wound. So for big high wound characteristic models, you can just be like, and suck their soul out. Life Stealer, 7+. If successfully cast, pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of the caster that's visible to them, and they take D3 mortal wounds. For each mortal wound suffered, you can heal a wound on the caster. Great one for big wizards. Reaping Scythe has a casting value of 4. If you cast it, pick one of the caster's weapons. In the start of your next hero phase, you can reroll failed hit and wound rolls for attacks made by that weapon. Shade Mist, casting value of 6. Pick a friendly Nighthaunt unit wholly within 12 of the caster. It's visible. -1 from wound rolls for attacks to target them until the next hero phase. Spectral Tether, this is my favorite one. Spectral Tether has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick a friendly Nighthaunt hero within 12 inches and heal D3 wounds allocated to them. That one's super useful. There's lots of stuff for healing units in this army. There's not that much stuff for healing heroes. So summonable units, you can get things like, you can ally in your Soulblight stuff, so you can ally in a vampire to give Deathly Invocation onto them. But healing other heroes is either going to be, it's usually going to be spells that you do it with. Then we have Artifacts of Power. Shadow's Edge, pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. If an unmodified hit for the attack is a 6, that attack inflicts D3 mortal wounds, and the attack sequence ends for that attack, so you don't roll for the rest of your attacks. Reaper of Sorrows, pick one of the bearer's melee weapons before attacking with it, roll 2d6. If the roll is higher than the target's bravery, they become -3 rend, because it's scary stabby. Balefire Blade, pick one of the bearer's melee weapons, add 1 to its damage characteristic. That's probably my favorite one. Knight of Sorrows on a mount, it gets real good. Slitter, after picking the enemy, the bearer to fight, before they pile in, you can pick one enemy model within 1 inch of the bearer and roll a die. If the roll is greater than that model's wound characteristic, it's just dead. You just RFP a guy, basically. So you do it like a paladin on a 4+, a stormcast basic infantry guy on a 3+. You slit the guy's throat basically before you start fighting. Headsman's Judgment, pick one of the bearer's melee weapons, add 1 to hit and wound rolls for attacks made by that weapon. So that's one for your Lord Executioner, because now he's 2s and 2s, and 5s become, actually 4s would become 3 damage if the Nightmare Lantern's nearby, but 5s become 3 damage because of that +1/+1. So yeah, Headsman's Judgment with a Nightmare Lantern nearby becomes real good real fast. And then Shrieking Blades, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by melee weapons that target the bearer. We have Relics of the Underworld, Cloak of the Waxing Moon, Deathless Spirits, the Deathless Spirits battle trait negates wounds inflicted by melee weapons on a 5 instead of a 6. Pendant of the Fell Wind, you can add 3 inches to normal moves made by friendly Nighthaunt units that are wholly within 12 inches. Dreadbolt Ring, when the bearer fights, they inflict 1 or more wounds with their melee weapons, and you inflict D3 mortal wounds on 1 enemy unit within 3 inches of the bearer after all of their attacks have been made. So basically, when you wound somebody, if you wound somebody, somebody else within 3 inches takes D3 mortal wounds. So their souls start to erupt into fire and stuff, and it spreads everywhere. Mirror of Screaming Souls, at the start of the shooting phase, roll 2d6 for each enemy unit within 8 inches. If the roll is higher than their bravery, they take a mortal wound, as everything just screams around you. Midnight Tome, the bearer becomes a wizard and knows the Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield spells, as well as one of spells from Lord of the Underworld. That's really cool. They can attempt to cast 1 spell in each of your hero phases, they attempt to unbind 1, and if they're already a wizard, they get to cast 1 additional spell in the hero phase instead. So you give it to a wizard, you can make like your Knight of Shrouds a wizard as well. Covetous Familiar, at the start of the combat phase, roll a die. For each enemy within 3 inches, and on 2+, they suffer a mortal wound. There's a little poltergeist that doesn't like anyone else being friends with you except for them. And then there's Infernal Lanterns. This is only for Guardians of Souls. The Light Shard of the Harvest Moon. Once per battle at the start of the combat phase, the bearer can use this artifact. If they do so, you can reroll failed hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Nighthaunt units that are wholly within 12 when they attack in the combat phase. So basically, he can become a better Soul Torment because you reroll everything once per battle within 12. Witchlight Lantern, add one of the casting rolls. That's probably the one you want because it's just free. And then Beacon of Nagashazar. If the bearer casts Spectral Lure, you can either heal D3 plus 3 wounds, or if no wounds have been allocated, bring back D6 plus 3 wounds worth of guys with combined characteristic D6 plus 3. So yeah, that one's pretty great too. But I think the Witchlight Lantern is probably the best because it's just all the time. It doesn't cost you anything. And those are your artifacts, spells, and traits. So let's talk about some new units. Now I'm going to focus on the units that are not in the Soul Wars box because obviously their stats are already online. And we'll start with Lady Olinder, the Mortarch of Grief, the new Mortarch, who has basically been tasked by Nagash to be the harbinger of his, like, being angry at everything that's alive. And she is a large base model. Movement of 6 inches, 7 wounds, bravery 10, 4+ save. But of course, like all Nighthaunts, she's ethereal, so her 4+ save is unmodifiable up or down. She does take mortal wounds as normal. She can fly. She has the Staff of Midnight with the 2-inch range, 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, -2 rend and D3 damage. And her Banshees get 6 attacks, 4s and 4s, 1 damage, and they have, of course, the Chilling Touch rule. Any unmodified roll of 6 becomes a mortal wound, and the attack sequence ends. They don't do that. They don't do it addition to, they just do it instead of, if they get a 6 to hit. Then she has the Grave Sands of Time. Once per battle in your hero phase, you can choose either to inflict D6 mortal wounds on an enemy hero, or heal D6 wounds that have been allocated to this model. So she can basically use the Sands of Time in this hourglass Nagash gives her to damage somebody by counting them out, or to put them back in for her to gain some life back. Lifting the Veil. This is probably her best ability, because it's not actually a shooting attack. At the start of your hero phase, pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of the model. It's visible to her, and roll a die. On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2+, that unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the roll. So 2 to 6 mortal wounds, basically. In addition, immediately heal D3 wounds and allocate to this model. So she just lifts the veil and just like starts to melt your brain. She full on Ark of the Covenants you, and you melt, and then she heals wounds. That makes me more comfortable with how many wounds she has, because only having 7 wounds for a big model like a Mortarch is... She doesn't seem that hard to kill, but she has a lot of built-in healing during her own turn. You just have to keep her alive long enough. The nice thing about having 7 wounds, though, too, is if you do keep her in a big unit, she'll be -1 hit with shooting attacks. She's the Mortarch of Grief. Add 1 to the number of models that flee when enemy units fail battle attacks within 12 inches of her, because they just freak out and run. And then Wail of the Damned. To start your shooting phase, roll 2d6 for each enemy unit within 10 inches of this model. So she has a Banshee Scream that works on everything within 12 from the Banshees that are nearby her. If it's higher than their bravery characteristic, take D3 mortal wounds. So remember, the Nighthaunts already affect bravery. You can use things like the Suffocating Brave Tide to further affect bravery, and everything within 10 inches of her has this happen. And she can also be put in the grave, right? So she can just show up within 10, because it's outside of 9, but still within 10 of multiple units, and then just shriek them to death. And she's also a wizard, so she can cast the Suffocating Grave Tide at the same time. Lady Olinder's a wizard. She's going to cast 2 different spells in each of your hero phases and unbind 2 different spells as well. She knows Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and Grief-Stricken spells. So Grief-Stricken has a casting value of 7. If you cast it, pick an enemy within 18 inches of the caster invisible to them. And to your next hero phase, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that unit, and add 1 to hit rolls for people attacking them. With melee weapons, not with shooting. Not that any shooting in this army is not just shrieking and actually based on a roll. And then in command ability, No Rest for the Wicked. You can use this command ability in your hero phase if this model is your general and is on the battlefield. If you do so, return 1 slain model to each friendly summonable Nighthaunt unit within 12 of the model with this command ability. So again, you're not bringing units back, but she can bring a model back. And there's no roll, so it could be a multi-wound model too, as long as it's Nighthaunt, as long as it's summonable. So your Hex Wraiths can just come back. You can bring a whole Spirit Host back. It's cooler than it sounds. It's not cool for Chain Rasps. It's cooler for big, like, spookier things that have lots of wounds. And yeah, and so basically she floats around and shrieks things. That's her gimmick. She tries not to die. She gets close and she lifts the veil and then shrieks. So the lift the veil is really cool. The shriek it could be unbelievably cool if you drop someone's courage down to like 3 or 4 and you spike dice, and you just explode guys with mortal wounds. Then we have Kurdos Valentian. This is the Craven King. Has a move of 6 inches. He is 7 wounds, 4+ save, bravery 10. They all seem to have all of the 3 different the Mortarch and the 2 sort of baby ghosts, Mortarch special characters, have the same basic stat line. He flies his companions. So he has the Sepulchral Scepter, which is his big mace that he fights with. 1 inch range, 5 attacks, 3s and 3s, -2 and D3 damage. Pretty good fighter. His Wraith Herald Spectral Claws, exactly the same as the ones on Lady, what's her name? Lady Olinder. So they are Wraith attacks. 6 attacks, 4s and 4s, 1 damage, but 6s do mortal wounds. With Frightful Touch. Of course, also ethereal, so he's unmodifiable in his save. Special rule, if I cannot rule, none shall rule at the start of the enemy hero phase. After the opposing player receives their command points, roll a die. On a 5+, you take the command point and you gain 1. So you steal the command point that your opponent generates at the start of every round, which is really good. And then Soul Crushing Smite. If the unmodified wound roll from attack made by the Scepter is 6, that attack has a damage characteristic of D6 instead of D3. And then Suffer No Rival. Reroll failed hit rolls for attacks made by the Spectral Scepter if the target is an enemy general. So he goes after the enemy general because he hates people, because he'll never be king. He's basically this guy that always wanted to be king, and Nagash marries him to Olinder, so he can never be king. She'll be the ruler forever, and he's just stuck in the afterlife, never being king and sitting on a throne that isn't his. He sits on her throne and follows her around. It's hilarious. Then there's Reignor the Grimhailer. So much like the others, he has a 14-inch move, a bit faster, but then the same wounds characteristic of 7 with a 4+ save and a bravery of 10. So because he's on his big flyy mount, he's considered to be a little bit faster. Now I have a theory about this guy. I think he's the old Supreme Patriarch of the Colleges of Magic. If you read his backstory, he actually fits in really well for being the old Bright Wizard that was in charge. Not Balthazar Gelt, but the guy Balthazar Gelt beat to become the second Supreme Patriarch. So read his story and see if you think that maybe he isn't from the world that was, and be the Supreme Patriarch. I like to fish for who I think these people are, and I think this is who it is. I think it's Supreme Patriarch of the Colleges of Magic. So Reignor the Grimhailer is named character. Of course, he's armed with his Fell Reaper. He is a 2-inch range, 4 attacks, 4s and 4s, 3+, -1 rend, and 2 damage. He's basically, he almost looks like the opposite of the Lord Incantor on Toralon. Or sorry, the Lord Arcanum on Toralon. It has ghostly hooves and teeth with a 1-inch range, 3 attacks, 4s and 4s, 1 damage, just like horse kicks. It flies, of course, as well. He has corpse candles. Now, these are really neat. So they're basically corpse made from the tallow of dead people, and they are like a life force thing. He can snuff them out. In your hero phase, before he attempts to cast a spell, you can say he'll snuff out a corpse candle. If you do so, pick an enemy model within 12 inches of this model, and that takes a mortal wound. If the mortal wound was suffered by an enemy model, add 1 to the casting roll. If it was suffered by him, so he can take the wound as well, add 3 to the casting roll. So if you put a mortal wound on an enemy unit, you get +1 to cast. If you put it on yourself, you get +3 to cast, which is kind of cool, because you can sacrifice your wounds. And there's healing in the factions, not so bad, to get +3 to your casting rolls. He's ethereal, just like all the other guys. He ignores any kind of rend. Frightful Touch. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack of the Fell Reaper is 6, it does 2 mortal wounds, and then the attack sequence ends. So it only hits on 4s, and it's damage 2, but if you get a 6, it's just 2 mortal wounds, which is great. And then Reaped Like Corn, you can reroll failed attack rolls if the target unit has 5 or more models in it. So that actually makes it super dangerous against big units. And of course, he's a wizard. He can attempt to cast 1 spell each hero phase and unbind 1 spell. He knows Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and Wraith Storm. The Wraith Storm spell has a casting value of 7. If successfully cast, pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of the caster that's visible to them, and that unit takes D3 mortal wounds. If any models that unit are slain as a result of the spell, it takes D3 mortal wounds again. So you want to target 1 wound units with it, because it basically overflows. If you kill at least 1, then you get to kill D3 more afterwards. It's not so good then at killing big things that are multi-wound. So other new units, units that we've already seen are things like the Shrouds, and Ethereal Steed. These are all the same. Guardian of Souls, the Nightmare Lantern, Spirit Torment, and of course the Lord Executioner. But there are some other new heroes like the Chain Ghasts. Now, they're actually not a hero. It's weird they're even in this section. They're basically the Spirit Torment's favorite victims, and they come in units of 2. I'm actually really kind of excited about this box. Now, they're pretty flimsy when it comes to staying alive. A unit of 2 only has 2 wounds and a 4+ unmodifiable save, but they have a 6-inch move and bravery of 10. They have their Ghast Flails, which is actually a shooting attack. This is actually the only shooting attack, I spoke too soon, that isn't a scream in this faction that I've seen so far. 15-inch range, does D3 attacks per guy, and it hits on 4s, wounds on 3s, rend -2, and 1 damage. Then you have your Ghast Flails, which are 2-inch range. Its attacks are C below. It attacks every single model in range. So your attacks characteristic is equal to the number of models that you're fighting. These guys are amazing at blitzing little units. Hits on 4s, wounds on 3s, run -1 damage. So they make attacks. It's kind of like the big axes on the paladins for the Stormcast. They get better the more guys you're fighting. They fly. They're ethereal, of course. They have another link in the chain. While this unit's wholly within 12 inches of a Spirit Torment, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 for friendly Nighthaunt units if they're within 12 inches of this unit. So what happens is you can chain them away from the Spirit Torment, and his reroll ability chains it another 12 inches further. And that's kind of cool, actually. It's a reason to take them in addition to just their basic abilities. It allows you to have big fat units of chain gas or chain rasps. Chain rasps? There's so many names of chain in it. And not have your Spirit Torment be stuck in one bubble, basically. You can make the bubble bigger for the rerolls to hit. And then he has Sweeping Blows, and that's the special rule that allows them to attack their attack character being equal to the number of models in range. Then there's the Dreadblade Harrow. He's like a baby Knight of Shrouds. These are basically the knights that let the Knight of Shrouds be such a jerk in his real life, and let him betray all of his oaths, and they did nothing about it, and so they're stuck with him now forever, even though they hate him. They have a 12-inch move, 5 wounds, 4+ save, and bravery of 10. Their Dreadblade is 1-inch range, 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 and 1 damage. And they have Ghostly Hooves and Teeth on their Charger, which is 2 attacks, 1-inch range, 4+, 5+, and 1 damage with no rend. Now they fly, just like everything else in this army. And of course they have the usual ethereal rule where they ignore rend. They have Phantasmal Disincorporation as a special rule. If this model is more than 3 inches away from the enemy models at the start of the movement phase, instead of making a normal move, you can send him to the battlefield and just set it up anywhere else, not within 9. He just teleports whenever he wants. So first turn during your deployment, you just show up and then move to the back of the enemy army. It's crazy. It's a good thing the unit's a 1. And then he has a Dreadblade. Add 1 of the damage characteristic of this model's Dreadblade if you make a charge move in the same turn. So it becomes a Knight of Sorrow on the charge, kind of. And add 1 to the attack characteristic of this model if it didn't charge. So it's either got 4 attacks or damage 2, depending on if it's charging or not charging. And then Curse of Loyalty. Reroll wound rolls of 1 for attacks made with this model's Dreadblade while it's within 9 inches of a friendly Knight of Shrouds. So that's pretty cool. It means that he's able to pop around the table a whole bunch, and then Shrouds actually makes him better. But of course, this guy's probably going to be off on his own a lot, and I could certainly see taking 2 of them just to go and harass the behind enemy lines. And then we have also... Oh, no, that's all the heroes. 2 Mansion and Chimera, they're all the same as before, as are the Harrow and the Lord Executioner and the Spirit Torment from the Soul Wars box. Then we have Grimghast Reapers. This is, I'm hoping a box these comes out that's the alternate way of making another unit in here, which is the Blade Geist Revenants. They kind of look the same model-wise with like different weapons. These are your good infantry. These are not the Chain Rasphords. These are your guys that fight pretty well. They move 8, 4+ save, 1 wound, bravery 10. Of course, they're ethereal and fly. The leader is an Extoller of Sheesh. He gets to be armed with a Death Knell, which is the special weapon, instead of his Slasher Scythe. So we've seen the Reaper stats already, but this is just their big unit basically profile. And their alternate build, what I want to talk about, is going to be the Blade Geist Revenants. Now they have the same stats in the basic profile, so 8-inch move, 4+ save, bravery 10, 1 wound. And they have Tomb Great Blades, which are 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 rend and 1 damage. So they're pretty decent fighters. They fly, they're ethereal. They have a Fearful Frenzy. You can reroll failed hit rolls for attacks made by this unit if they're wholly within 12 inches of any friendly Spirit Torments or Chain Ghasts. So they get better basically when they're nearby those units. And Whirling Death, they can retreat and charge in the same turn. In addition, add 1 to their attack characteristic if they made a charge in the same turn. So they're like a second wave, basically, coming over the top of your Chain Ghasts and obliterating everything that's nearby. And of course, because they can fly right over a combat into the rear and start fighting. There are, of course, the Dread Scythe Harridans with a move of 8 inches, 1 wound, 4+ save, and bravery 10. They have Scythed Limbs with 3 attacks, 4s and 3s, -1 rend and 1 damage. They fly. They have a Slasher Clone as their leader, who gets +1 attack. And they're ethereal. They have a Harrowing Shriek, -1 to hit if you're within 3 inches of them, and unless they have a bravery characteristic of 6 or more. So the more brave you are, you should ignore the penalty. And then Murderous Bloodlust. If an unmodified wound roll for this attack is a 6, it's damage 2, which is pretty super sweet. Then, of course, Spirit Host and Hex Wraiths are in here, and we have the new Black Coach. It has a movement characteristic that's variable based on its damage. Starts at 14, goes to 6 if it's down to 10+ wounds. 12 wounds, save characteristic of 4+, and damage 10. It is bravery 10. It is, of course, ethereal and flies. And as Steeds and Crew, the Karen Wraith's Soul Reach Grasp is a gun. It's the other gun in here that I'd forgotten about. 10-inch range, 1 attack, 3+3+, -3, and D3 damage. And that's basically a soul reaching out and grabbing you. And as melee weapons, there's a Karen Wraith's Reaper Scythe, 3 attacks, 4s and 3s, -1, 2 damage. The Soul Reach Grasp, which can be used in melee as well with a 3-inch range. 1 attack, 3s and 3s, -3, D3 damage. So you can use it as a gun and use it again in melee. The Relic Bearer's Spectral Claws, variable attacks, starts with 9, and they also have Frightful Touch. And that means that they're 4s and 4s, -1 and 1 damage. They get better basically as it gets crazier. If an unmodified attack roll for the Karen Wraith's Reaper Scythe is 6, the attacker against does 2 mortal wounds. And if the Relic Bearers are a 6, it's 1 mortal wound. So it's basically, Frightful Touch is basically Chilling Touch, but it applies to both the Spectral Claws and the Reaper Scythe. Then the Nightmare's Hooves and Teeth, 8 attacks, 4s and 4s, 1 damage, no rend. So it's pretty terrifying amount of damage this thing can do in melee, and it's got a pretty cool gun as well. And it starts to degrade. The attacks and the Spectral Claws go down once it's got more wounds on it. So it goes 9, 8, 7, 6, 5 based on its wound level. And for every 2 wounds you take, you basically drop a level until you're down to 10 wounds. And it's moved 14 down through 6, so 14, 12, 10, 8, 9. Then it also gets Evocation of Death. At the start of every battle round, roll 3 dice, and on a 4+, on each of those dice, the Black Coach gains a level of power, up to the 5th level. So basically, by the second turn, if you roll okay, it's totally powered up and it's ready to fight. The first level, Nimbus of Power, in your hero phase, heal D3 wounds that are allocated to this model. In addition, you pick 1 friendly summon unit within 12 and return D3 slain models to that unit. Returning models must be set up within 12 inches of this model. So what's really cool about that is it's models, not wounds. So you want to take things like Spirit Hosts or Hex Wraiths nearby to it, because it just brings back whole models. But they need to surround it basically and stay nearby so they can be in that bubble. Then there's the second level Unholy Vigor. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for this model's melee weapons. In addition, it can run and charge in the same turn. Third level, Spectral Scythes. After the unit completes a charge move, pick an enemy unit within 1 inch of this moon and roll a die on a 2+. It takes D3 mortal wounds. 4th level, Insubstantial Form. It can retreat and charge in the same turn. And then 5th level, Witchfire. In your hero phase, roll a die for each enemy within 3 on a 4+. It takes D3 mortal wounds. The thing just becomes a bomb. It's just a damage machine that can bring back fighty guys. I would surround it probably with either Hex Wraiths or Spirit Hosts. Probably Spirit Hosts, although they're a bit slow to keep up with it. You want to spend CBs to make the auto run a 6 to stay nearby, and then just have them bring back Spirit Hosts and murdering stuff and being terrifying to stand next to because he has tons of mortal wounds. And then finally, has Reap Like Corn. You can reroll failed hit rolls for attacks made by this model, and it's Reaper Scythe. The target has 5 or more wounds, so the Reaper Scythe on the Karen Wraith gets a little bit better. And that's it for new units. Let's talk about the new endless spells. First, there's the Shyish Reaper, which is a big scythe thing. It has only Nagash, Supreme Lord of the Undead, and Nighthaunt Wizards can bring this guy in. So what's cool about all of these is Nagash can do all of them, because why would he not be able to? He's Nagash, he's Supreme Lord of the Undead. Or Nighthaunts. So they're Nighthaunts only, or Nagash. So there's a way to slip these into, if you want, a Legion Nagash army by playing with Nagash. But then you're playing with an 800-point miniature. The Reaper is predatory, of course. It's casting value 7, set up within 6. Sweeping Death, when this model is set up, it can immediately move. Soul Reaper, it moves, it's not predatory? It's not predatory. It moves 8 inches and can fly. It is predatory. Before moving it, pivot it lengthwise on its base so it's pointing towards the direction you want it to move, like it's scraping that way. The initial pivot is free and does not count towards movement. And then after it's moved, roll a die for each model it moved over. If the roll is equal to or greater than the model's save characteristic, they take 1 mortal wound. So the better the save, the more dangerous it is, which I think is really interesting. And then empowered by Shish, if you're playing in the realm of Shish, it moves 12 instead of 8. There's the Vault of Souls. This one's kind of like the Comet the Stormcast have, which you can hear about when you check that review out. It's a vault, and Nagash or Nighthaunts can cast it. It's set up wholly within 18 of the caster on a 6+. It's predatory, moves 8 inches and can fly. It's a Soul Siphon. At the end, after this model is set up or moved, roll a dice for each model within 6 inches of it. On a 6+, to take a mortal wound. So it's just pulses an aura that does mortal wounds. And then Soul Eruption. Keep track of the number of mortal wounds it's done. If the total is 20 or more at the end of any phase, all units within 6 inches take D6 mortal wounds, and this model is dispelled. Basically, it sucks up souls and then blows up like a bomb. I thought that was kind of neat. And then it's empowered by Shish if you're playing in the Realm of Death. It's got a 9-inch range for those mortal wounds instead of a 6. So it sucks out wounds within 9 and blows up within 9. And there's the Mortalis Terminexus, which is a big hourglass full of like grave sand. You can summon it. Again, Nagash or Nighthaunt wizards can do so. It's on a 6+, and you set up wholly within 18. It's predatory, moves 8 inches, and can fly. And it's the Keeper of Mortality. After it's set up removed, the controlling player must decide whether the Mortalis Terminexus will reverse or hasten time. If they choose to reverse time, heal D3 wounds on every unit within 6. If they choose to hasten time, every unit within 6 takes D3 mortal wounds. And then it's empowered by Shish. The controlling player has a 12-inch range to affect everything as opposed to a 6-inch range. So it's kind of neat, because again, this one could be turned on you and you can start healing your opponent's stuff if you leave it alone and your opponent goes and grabs it, or if your opponent gets to move it and then activate it during his hero phase. And that's it. Let's talk about some point value profiles and some War Scroll battalions. So in the newer format, of course, there is a single War Scroll battalion that's a group of other battalions called the Nighthaunt Procession. So we'll go through the baby battalions first that make up that bigger one. First is the Shroud Guard. It's 1 Knight of Shrouds or Reichner the Grimhailer, and then 2 units of Blade Geist Revenants, and you get Frenzied Fervor. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a Blade Geist Revenant model. That's wholly within 12 Knight of Shrouds or Reichner. On a 5+, it's negated. If you use this ability, you can't also use Deathless Spirits. Then there's Death Riders, 1 to 3 Dreadblade Harrows, 2 units of Hexwraiths, and a Black Coach. This one actually seems really cool, because I would actually take all that stuff. Spectral Spearhead, add 1 to charge rolls for this unit. In addition, if you make an unmodified charge roll of 9+, they can immediately they can fight immediately after they make their charge move. That does not stop the unit from fighting again. So basically, it's a better Wave of Terror, because it's a 9 instead of a 10. Then there is the Condemned, which is a Spirit Torment, a unit of Chain Gas, and 2 Chain Rasp Hordes, but they have to be at least 20 models. You can't take minimum units of Chain Rasps and fulfill this battalion. Cruel Taskmasters, you can roll failed hit rolls for attacks made by the Chain Rasp Horde units within this battalion if they're wholly within 15 of the Spirit Torments or Chain Ghasts. And that's pretty cool, because it means that it's not just ones, it's just everything. You're rerolling all your hit rolls, and you get a lot of attacks out of unit of Chain Rasps. There's the Chain Guard, a Guardian of Souls, 2 Chain Rasp Hordes, and they have to be at least 20 models as well. Each time a Chain Rasp Horde from this battalion is affected by a Spectral Lure or Temporal Translocation cast by the Guardian of Souls, you can return D6 slain models to this unit in addition to the ones returned. So basically, you get a bonus D6 models returned. It just makes the units almost unkillable. The Execution Horde, 1 Lord Executioner and 3 units of Spirit Host. It's basically the Lord Executioner and all his victims wandering around with him. The Headsman's Masses, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target Lord Executioner, while a Spirit Host unit from this battalion is within 6 inches of that attacker's unit. In addition, add +1 to hit rolls for Lord Executioner while the Spirit Hosts are within 6 inches of the target unit. So they defend him a little bit more, because -1 from all hit rolls, and that's +1 to hit nearby, because they distract the opponent. The Death Stalkers, a Cairn Wraith, 2 units of Grimghast Reapers, and 2 units of Glaive Wraith Stalkers. After setup is complete before the battle begins, pick 1 enemy unit to be soul marked by this battalion, and you get to +1 to hit and wound rolls made by this battalion against the marked unit. So you get to go and hunt somebody down. There's the Shrieker Host, which is a Banshee, 2 units of Harridans and 2 units of Mirrenburn Banshees. Reroll Battleshock tests Battleshock rolls of 1 for enemy units, so they're within 6 inches of enemy units or any units from this battalion. Sort of the Battleshock phase. In addition, the Inspiring Presence command ability cannot be used if you're within 6 inches of models from this battalion. It makes them scary. And those are the basic War Scroll battalions. The big one is the Nighthaunt Procession. And the Nighthaunt Procession consists of 1 Shroud Guard and then 6 War Scroll battalions chosen from any of the other ones, basically. But you can't take the Shroud Guard again. And then their ability is Bound Beneath Indomitable Will. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly Nighthaunt model from this battalion within 12 inches of your general, or a friendly Nighthaunt hero from the battalion. On a 6+, the wound is negated. If this battalion is part of a Nighthaunt army, this ability replaces the Deathless Spirits battle trait for all units in this battalion. And that is our War Scroll battalions. So let's talk points. Of course, you've seen all the points in the General's Handbook 2018 that comes out today. Nothing has changed from that battalion, or from that list of points to this one. And it does, of course, include all of the same rules for allies and the new endless spells as well. The Nighthaunts have access to Death Lords and Soulblight, so they have fairly limited access to Death Allies. But that's kind of in keeping with the fact that they have their own kind of game that they play. they're a bit different from the endless CP summoning of the Nighthaunts, the Death Rattle units, and they kind of like lean on healing a bit as well instead. I will go through the points for the the additional stuff, the battalions, and the new endless spells, though, just in case people haven't seen them. The Chain Guard are 120 points, the Contempt are 150, the Deathstalkers are 120, the Death Riders are 130, the Execution Horde is 100, the Nighthaunt Procession is 80, Shrieker Host is 140, the Shroud Guard are 110, and the Mortalis Terminexus is 60, the Shyish Reaper is 40, and the Vault of Souls is 40. I'm not surprised the Mortalis Terminexus is 60, because it's amazing. It's so good. It's like a better Chronomantic Cogs. Not even better. They're both good. They're both different and good. So there's my review. Of course, there's also battle plans in here for playing some cool themed games. There is the Path to Glory rules for playing Nighthaunts, and all the other great background stuff that you can come to expect in a current range Battletome for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to check out the Stormcast review, you can see it linked below. And of course, you can check out the battle report between the Nighthaunts and the Stormcast as well that went up today. So thanks for watching. We'll see you for more of these in the future. So I'm Ash. Happy programming. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to support the channel, of course, like and subscribe and hit the little bell below so you get notifications when I post future content. I do post stuff 7 days a week. If you want to support the channel further, you can, of course, buy a t-shirt through Spreadshirts, buy a measuring gauge or objective markers from Death Ray Designs, or, of course, most importantly, there is Patreon. Patreon is what makes all this possible, keeps the lights on, pays for the studio costs, pays for the equipment, model costs, and everything else, and most importantly, puts food in my kids' bellies and a roof over their heads. Big thanks to everyone, past, future, who supported me. I do this stuff because of you guys, and of course, I will continue doing it as long as I can.